Daniel hit six figures for the first time on a Tuesday. He remembers the exact day because he took a screenshot of his pay stub and sent it to 3 different people before he even finished reading the rest of the email. $100,000 a year. The number he had been chasing since he was 22 years old, sitting in a cubicle making $41,000 and telling himself that once he crossed 6 figures, everything would feel different. Lighter. Solved. That night he went out to a nice dinner with his girlfriend, the kind of place he used to scroll past on his phone and bookmark for someday. Someday had arrived. He ordered the steak without checking the price first, which felt like a small, quiet victory all on its own. 6 months later, he was lying awake at 2 a.m. doing math in his head, more stressed about money than he had ever been, making $55,000 a year in a one-bedroom he split with a roommate. That sentence should not make sense. A person should not feel worse after getting the raise they spent 4 years working toward. And the fact that it happens, constantly, predictably, to people who did nothing wrong, is exactly why we need to slow down and actually look at what happened in between. Here's the part that's going to make you feel either a lot better or a little worse, depending on how you choose to look at it. Daniel is not an outlier. He's not bad with money. He didn't blow it all on something dumb. If you sat down and went through his bank statement line by line, you wouldn't find some obvious, embarrassing mistake that explains everything. You'd find a guy who, on paper, looks like he's doing fine. And that's exactly the problem, because right now, in this country, roughly 40% of people earning 6 figures say they're living paycheck to paycheck. Not struggling to afford luxuries on top of a comfortable life, actually struggling, the same tight, anxious, end-of-the-month feeling that someone making half that salary deals with. And it gets stranger the higher you go. Households pulling in over $150,000 a year report the exact same thing. The exact same tightness in the chest when a surprise expense shows up. The exact same feeling of staring at a bank balance and not being able to explain, in any specific way, where the money actually went. This isn't a fringe problem affecting a few careless people. This is now a normal, common, statistically unremarkable experience for a huge percentage of high earners in America. Financial researchers have actually started referring to it as money dysmorphia, a disconnect between what your numbers say on paper and how secure you actually feel day to day. Your income statement says one thing. Your nervous system says something else entirely. And the gap between those two things is where Daniel was living for most of that year. So if you've ever hit a number you used to dream about, 50,000, 75, 100, whatever your version of it is, and felt absolutely nothing change, you are not broken, and you are not bad with money. You're experiencing something that has a name, a mechanism, and a fix. And almost nobody sits down and actually explains any of the three. That's what we're doing today. Let's go back and actually walk through Daniel's raise, step by step, because the way it unfolded in real life is the entire story. This isn't a hypothetical. This is what actually happens to a real paycheck. He went from $65,000 to $100,000 over about 18 months, 2 promotions and 1 job switch in between. On paper, that's an extra $35,000 a year suddenly appearing in his life. Written out like that, it sounds like winning a small lottery. It sounds like the kind of jump that should immediately and permanently change how secure you feel. Here's what it actually felt like, month by month, once the new number started hitting his account. The first thing that happened, before he'd spent a single dollar of it on anything, was taxes. Nobody sits you down and explains that crossing into a new income bracket doesn't mean your entire salary suddenly gets taxed at a higher rate. Only the portion of income above that line gets taxed more. That's how marginal tax brackets actually work. But knowing that fact intellectually and feeling it land in your bank account are two very different experiences. Daniel did the math in his head and expected roughly $2,800 extra a month to show up. What actually landed was closer to $1,900. That $900 gap, completely invisible, completely legal, completely normal, quietly ate almost a third of his entire raise before he had made a single spending decision of any kind. This is the part most people skip when they talk about lifestyle inflation, and it matters, because it means the raise you're picturing in your head is already smaller than the one that actually lands. The starting line was further back than Daniel thought. Now here's where the rest of it went. And I want you to actually listen closely to this part, because none of these individual decisions were stupid. None of them would raise a single red flag if a financial advisor looked at them one at a time. That's exactly what makes this so dangerous. There's no single moment you can point to and say, that's where it went wrong. The first thing Daniel did, about 2 months after the new salary kicked in, was move out of the $600 room he'd been renting in a shared apartment with 2 roommates. He moved into his own one-bedroom for $1,900 a month. That's $1,300 additional dollars, gone, every single month, before anything else in his life changed at all. And if you'd asked him in the moment, he would have had a completely reasonable explanation ready. He was 26 years old, making 6 figures, and still living like he was in his sophomore year of college, sharing a bathroom with 2 other guys. He'd earned his own space. Anyone in his position would have made the same call. A few weeks after that came the car. His sedan was 10 years old, had a check engine light that came on intermittently for reasons nobody could ever fully diagnose, and felt, in his words, embarrassing to park outside a job that paid him 6 figures. So he financed something newer. $490 a month, for 60 months, because that's the payment that fit comfortably into his new budget without feeling like a stretch. Also reasonable. Also $490 that simply did not exist in his life 1 year earlier. Then the smaller things started layering on top, the way they always do. His new job's health insurance plan, despite being from a bigger, more prestigious company, actually cost him more out of pocket per paycheck than his old plan had. The new apartment building didn't have a gym, so he signed up for one nearby, $45 a month, completely worth it, he told himself. And because the new job came with longer hours and a brutal commute, cooking dinner most nights stopped happening. Food delivery, 3 or 4 nights a week, became the default instead of the exception. Nobody's decision in that list would make anyone raise an eyebrow. Stacked together, they quietly absorbed the entire raise, one reasonable choice at a time, without a single dramatic moment anywhere in the process. Let's actually put this side by side, because seeing the real numbers stacked next to each other is what makes this click in a way that vague warnings about lifestyle creep never quite managed to do. Take-home increase from the entire raise, after taxes, about $1,900 a month. New apartment cost compared to the old one, $1,300. New car payment, $490. Add those 2 together and you're already at $1,790. And we haven't touched the health insurance difference, the gym membership, or a single dollar of food delivery yet. Daniel's entire raise, for all practical purposes, was completely consumed by exactly 3 decisions, all made within the first 4 months of earning more money. Not over years. Months. And here's the part that makes this even more uncomfortable to sit with right now. Wages across the country have actually been losing ground to inflation for the first time in 3 years. So even the small sliver of the raise that didn't go directly toward lifestyle upgrades is quietly worth less in real terms than it would have been a few years ago. The raise was real, on paper, in the same way a check is real before you realize what it actually costs to cash it. The progress underneath it was not. Here's the part that actually matters, the part one really need you to sit with for a second, because if you walk away from this video just thinking, okay, don't upgrade your apartment so fast, you've completely missed the actual lesson. The problem was never that Daniel made bad individual decisions. Every single one of them, examined on its own, in isolation, was completely fine. A reasonable, defensible choice that plenty of financially responsible people would make in his exact position. The actual problem is something much quieter and much harder to notice while it's happening. His spending and his income were moving in perfect, immediate lockstep, with zero delay and zero friction built in between them. The moment his income went up, his spending found a way to match it within a matter of months. Almost automatically. Almost invisibly. Nobody sat down and decided this would happen. It just did, the way water finds the lowest point in a room without anyone directing it there. This is the part nobody ever puts a name to, and it's worth saying plainly: your spending doesn't rise because you're undisciplined, or weak-willed, or bad with money. It rises because you never built a gap on purpose between what comes in and what goes out. And without a gap that you deliberately design and protect, every single raise you get for the rest of your entire career, every promotion, every bonus, every job switch, will get absorbed the exact same way this one did. The number on your pay stub will keep climbing, year after year, and you will feel genuinely proud watching it climb. The number sitting in your actual savings and investment account simply will not follow it up the same staircase, unless you force it to. Now let me tell you about Marcus, because Marcus got offered the exact same job Daniel did, around the same time, for the exact same $100,000 salary. Same offer letter, practically the same number on the same line. Marcus moved into a slightly nicer apartment too. He wasn't trying to live like a monk. But the upgrade cost him $300 more a month than his old place, not $1,300. He kept driving his old car for 2 more years, check engine light and all, because it still ran fine, and a car payment felt like the easiest place to delay gratification without actually sacrificing anything that mattered to him day to day. And here's the one move that changed his entire trajectory, the thing that made all the difference. The very first time his new salary hit his account, before he did anything else with it, he set up an automatic transfer that routed half of the raise, about $950 a month, straight into a brokerage account that he genuinely, almost deliberately, barely looked at. He never saw that money sitting in his checking account waiting to be spent. It left before his lifestyle ever got the chance to notice it existed, let alone start adjusting to depend on it. 18 months later, Marcus has roughly $17,000 sitting in investments that simply would not exist if he had let his spending drift the same direction Daniel's did. Same job offer. Same 6-figure salary. Same city, same cost of living, same starting point in almost every measurable way. Completely different financial trajectory, built entirely on one decision, made once, on day one of the new salary, and then repeated automatically, without thought or willpower, every single month after that. So here's the actual thing I want you to take away from all of this, and it's going to sound almost suspiciously simple after everything we just walked through together. Your income is not the number that determines whether you end up building real wealth. The gap between your income and your spending is. That's the entire metric. That's the whole game, reduced to one sentence. A guy making $70,000 a year with a consistent $1,500 monthly gap is going to end up wealthier, meaningfully, dramatically wealthier, than a guy making $150,000 with a gap of 0, every single time, given enough years for that gap to compound. This is exactly why so many 6-figure earners feel quietly broke despite a number on their offer letter that should theoretically feel like security. They hit a bigger income number and simply assumed the gap between earning and spending would appear on its own, automatically, as some kind of natural side effect of making more. It doesn't work that way, and it never has. The gap is something you have to build on purpose, the exact same way you'd build muscle in a gym, and just like muscle, the moment you stop actively maintaining it because things feel easier and more comfortable, it disappears just about as fast as it showed up in the first place. So here's exactly what to do about it, and I'm going to keep this specific and concrete, because vague advice like, spend less or, be more disciplined, is precisely the kind of thing that got Daniel into this mess in the first place. Vague advice doesn't survive contact with a real paycheck and a real apartment listing. First move, the moment any raise hits your account, a promotion, a new job, a bonus, a tax refund, anything that increases the money flowing in, before you make a single lifestyle decision about it, automatically route at least half of that increase into an account you don't casually check. Not your everyday checking account, where it sits one tap away from a late-night impulse buy. Somewhere with a small amount of built-in friction, so that one bad Tuesday, one rough week, one moment of low willpower doesn't quietly undo months of progress. Second move, give yourself a real, genuine, guilt-free upgrade with the other half. This isn't about deprivation, and it never was. Marcus didn't live like he was still in college making $30,000 a year. He upgraded his life by $300 a month, not $1,300. The goal here isn't to feel like you're punishing yourself for getting a raise. The goal is proportion, enjoying more of your life now, while still protecting the half that builds your future. Third move, and this is the one that actually matters most over the long run, do this again, every single time your income goes up, for the entire rest of your career. Not just once, when you happen to remember this video. Every time. Because the gap you build and protect at $70,000 a year is the exact same gap you'll need to protect at $150,000, $200,000, and every number beyond that. The salary on your pay stub will keep changing throughout your life. The discipline required to protect the gap underneath it does not change at all. Daniel eventually fixed this, by the way, and it's worth telling you how, because it proves the system works regardless of when you actually start using it. He didn't fix it by earning more money, even though he easily could have told himself that was the answer. He went back and built the exact same automated system Marcus had been quietly running the entire time, starting from exactly where he was, with the salary he already had. It took him about a year of consistent, automated transfers to build the same gap that Marcus already had after 18 months. Slower, because he started later, but the exact same destination, reached through the exact same mechanism. Here's what I genuinely want you to walk away with today. The number on your pay stub was never the finish line, no matter how big it gets, no matter how many years you spend chasing it. $100,000 does not feel like freedom on its own, and it never will, for anyone, regardless of where you live or what stage of life you're in. The gap does. The distance you deliberately maintain between what comes in and what goes out is the single number in your entire financial life that actually determines whether you end up genuinely wealthy, or just genuinely well paid while feeling exactly as anxious as you did before the raise ever showed up. Chase the gap. Not the salary. The salary, more often than not, will take care of itself over time. The gap never will, not unless you're the one building it, on purpose, starting with the very next dollar that lands in your account.